of May 7th, 2024. And we are resuming this afternoon with item number 4, public hearing item 4. And I'm going to turn it over to Corey Harala to take us through the afternoon schedule.
All right, thank you. Starting with public hearing item number 4, LPC 24-05697, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 475, Lot 34, 40 Wooster Street in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. This is a store building designed by Buckman and Diesler and built in 1895 to 96, and the application is to remove a fire escape and construct a rooftop addition.
Good afternoon. Hello. Hi, my name is Yossi. I'm the architect for the project. The project is located on 40 Wooster Street. It's a 6-story building that used to be office building, and we're doing a conversion to residential. We're proposing a 4-story and a retail store, 4 residential units and a retail store at the street level. I must mention that I was previously here in 2017 for a very similar application. We had back then also a rooftop addition, which was approved. And now under new ownership by Eric Matlick, we are doing a very similar renovation and addition. I will start with the presentation. My screen. So the location on this slide here, we can see the location of the building in the district. It's almost at the corner of Rand and Wooster. It's the second building on the corner. And you can see here on the map by the Soho Cast Iron District, this is the location over here. We have historic maps, site plan, and of course, tax photos from 1940s and 1980s. As you can see here from the 1980s photos, it's very similar to the condition we have today. Scope that we are proposing is to have a rooftop penthouse addition. At the same time, removal of the fire escape. This is the building today, and this is the fire escape removal that we're trying to approve. These are technical drawings that we're going to go over later on. This is the rear elevation showing the rooftop addition, as well as removal of rear fire escape at staff level that we are doing separately. This is the side elevation, which will also include removal and replacement of windows and other items. As you can see here in this photo, this is the current condition of the building. Part of the scope is to renovate the facade as well. There is many patches of brick and deteriorating mortar. There are window AC units that we are going to remove and replace, and other graffiti and rear fire escape. In this image here, we are mapping rooftop additions in the district. I'm just going to go over a few, and there are large photos as well of each one of them over here. This, I believe, is on Broadway. There is a rooftop addition of stucco and glass. On the right side, there is an addition of stucco, glass, and metal. Another one here on Broome Street on the right side. It's a rooftop addition of stucco and glass, and others that you can see here with various materials. In the following slides, there are several case studies that we documented for those rooftop additions. For example, 26 Green, which have a 2-story penthouse. And the other one we have here on 7276 Green, the rooftop addition as well. This addition here, it's on 431 Broome Street. And this is how it's visible from a higher level. And this addition is on 463 Broadway as well. Addition with stucco, glass, and metal. And this one, it's on 121 Green Street, as you can see here. And 422 West Broadway. So rooftop additions are fairly common in the district. Some of them are visible and were previously approved by Landmark. The second scope, it's about the fire escape removal. I'm showing here a few case studies of recent removals. On the left side, it is before and after on 52 Mercer Street. This is the before and this is the after. There is a recent approval on Canal Street on 561 Canal, and this one is on 560 Broadway. These are enlarged photos of the same buildings showing the before and after. 560 Broadway. And now we'll talk specifically about 40 Wooster. So for 40 Wooster, we have existing fire escape, and part of our renovation is to upgrade the building and to modernize it. Fire escape will no longer be used for any kind of egress. And it's not required by code as well. I was walking down the fire escape several times. They feel unsafe and unstable. They would like to remove it for several reasons. I must mention a few more items. It does have some kind of like minimal curl motifs on it, as you can see here. It seems to be with minimal historical value. See that the basket here and the bracket are kind of in a way on the overall look of the building. They're distracting from the decorative bundle. And the request to remove them. In these slides here, I'm going to show you as we're walking along Wooster Street, there are already many fire escapes that were removed, especially on this view here. This is 40 Wooster looking north. As you can see, the entire east side of the street already doesn't have any fire escape. And on the left side, there are maybe one or two. So it is kind of common as well to remove the fire escape, to have a cleaner look, and to have some kind of continuity with the block. These are all different photos of buildings with fire escape. Now I'm going to talk about the penthouse addition and the decisions we made to design it in such a way. So the current condition of the building is that the elevator and the stair bulkhead are on the on the west side of the building. And for this particular renovation, because we are adding an elevator and stair bulkhead, which extend beyond the roof and the current building height, we shift it to the opposite side to reduce visibility. At the same time, we push the setback approximately 50 feet for the penthouse itself and for the fire, for the main stairs of the building, 37 feet as well to reduce visibility. On top of the penthouse, there will be 6 HVAC condenser, which will be slightly shifted to the right because we need to maintain 6 feet fire department access from the front to the back, and we are masking the HVAC equipment with a metal mesh and other elements to screen them from the neighbors and from the street. These are elevation drawing of design. On the left is the existing, on the right is the proposed. I'm going to talk about the element first. What you see here, this is the fire department ladder, which is required to climb over the mechanical equipment. On the left, we have a protective guardrail. These are the screens that screening the HVAC equipment, and below this is the penthouse with its glass elements. This is the rear elevation here. As you can see, we are kind of extending the window rhythm to above with a fluted glass to mask and hide the HVAC equipment from the neighbors across the building, because I think there is about 25 feet from building to building, and it would be nice not to look at a metal mesh or something better. And this is the south elevation, which will be mainly blocked by, I believe, the 74 grand here. And this will be the actual penthouse with a railing that is required, metal mesh to block the HVAC equipment. Material we are using is, we have a retractable awning made out of fabric to minimize visibility when it's not in use. We have one freestanding column in chrome finish. We are going to use a cladding system of travertine along with glass and metal. This section illustrates that part of the design will lower the roof line by almost 3 feet to reduce visibility from the current condition. We built a mock-up recently, and the sightline diagrams represent the visibility along the way. I need to mention a few things. There is limited visibility across from the gallery at 76th Street, some far distance, and it's above a 2-story structure. The other visible from the corner of Wooster and Grant. However, 70 Grant eventually will be built and complete and will block and mask the view from that particular point. And this is an enlarged view on the rooftop addition. This is exactly the visible part that will be blocked by 72 Grand, and this is an enlarged view of that same rooftop. Few items I would like to mention. We used simple clean line for the penthouse with beige finished travertine rain screen panels with neutral in colors and texture, with regular rectilinear shapes and no ornaments. Design and material to retain a secondary presence and overall with utilitarian in nature. Limited visibility from secondary facade only from 76 Grand. And the equipment is well screened from the facade. Last slide, these are the materials of Soho: styrofoam, glass, stucco, sandstone, brick. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Okay, let's see if we have any public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to speak on this item? Not seeing anyone, I will turn it over to Gregory Kalla to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We currently have one remote participant with their hand raised, that being John Graham from the Victorian Society of New York. John Graham, I've promoted you to panelist. Okay. So please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. Fire escapes in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District are considered character-defining features of the district. They reflect its historic industrial functions and episodes in the city's history, leading to their widespread installation. The fire escape on this building is of the type, early and ornate, that we typically urge to be retained. However, this case may be the exception. The building has a fine and carefully ornamented symmetrical facade. This facade is thrown off balance and partially obscured by the fire escape, which has damaged the brick and terracotta. Should removing the fire escape be found appropriate, we believe that a condition is required. The Commission should require that all embedded iron remnants be removed from the facade and that the damaged masonry be properly restored to return it to its original appearance and to prevent deterioration. The rooftop addition is modest in size and well set back, and we think its visibility over a secondary facade is not significant. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised in our attendees list. So I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends approval of the removal of the fire escapes from the front and rear facades and approval of the minimally visible penthouse, the placement of the mechanical equipment, and the relocation of the elevator mechanical equipment enclosure. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Thank you. So the testimony was largely supportive, but there were some questions about if the fire escape is removed, would you remove all of the embedded metal and do necessary repairs?
Repair all the damages and restore the stone. condition. For you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? All right, so let's move to close the hearing. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing is closed and we have two components to this application. One is for a one-story rooftop addition and mechanical equipment on top of that. The rooftop addition is visible over a secondary facade, as we can see in this rendering. And the second component is to replace the fire escapes, and the applicant has confirmed that they would do all necessary repairs where the fire escape has damaged the brick and terracotta. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to start this one?
So I have to say, this is a very attractive building. I'm going to just speak about first the fire escapes. And as has been pointed out by building architect, there's a lot of lovely detail here on the building that is currently that you can't see. And I don't think these fire escapes were original to the building, so I feel very comfortable taking them off, and it sounds like the applicant's going to do all the necessary work to make sure that the facade is repaired where needed. In terms of the rooftop addition, as you mentioned, there are in this particular area, this neighborhood, there are quite a few additions with limited visibility, which this has. So I feel comfortable with that. The thing that's a little different, the travertine is quite a lovely is a way to clad the addition. Normally, we see rooftop additions with either metal cladding or stucco in a very neutral color that help it disappear a little more. And so that would be my recommendation.
All right, Commissioner Chu?
In terms of the fire escape, I agree with Jeannie. I think that in this case, especially, it's not original to the building, and I actually feel like it obscures the difference between the top floor and the lower floors in an unattractive way. So I'm okay with that. In terms of the penthouse, yeah, I do agree with Jeannie in the comment that it stands out from the view. I also see that it's a corner lot that's going to get probably built into, which would completely obscure it. Not such a big deal to me in that sense. I think it's pretty minimal, but yeah, if the other commissioners feel that material change would be better, I would go along with that.
Commissioner Master?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that removing the fire escape is fine. The rooftop addition, yeah, it does stick out a little bit because of the color. And yet I feel like I've seen other types of materials on rooftops in this district. So it doesn't, it doesn't bother me as much. And as Stephen said, you know, if something is built here, then it'll obstruct the view regardless. So I'm actually okay with it as is.
Commissioner Jefferson?
The fire escape, I think it's fine. I mean, it doesn't need it as functional, so you know. In terms of this material, you know, if I wake up one morning, I feel it's a problem. I'll wake up later, not a problem.
So how do you feel today?
So sort of could go either way. All right,
I'll go.
all right. And I think Corey just wants to add something.
Just to clarify with the visibility, it's true, there's an approved building, a commission-approved building for the corner. The commission has approved it. We've not issued the permit yet or have the filing drawings, but I think it's close. But there is a second view from Grand where over a shorter building where you would still see the side of this. So there's two views. One of them could go away with the construction of the new building. But the second one, there's no plans for that to be built at this time.
But
So
you
you'd
see
still have
that
a view.
Oh, it's.
You'd
at
see the
back.
side, you'd see the side of
Side,
their,
right, okay.
So there's two views, right?
yes.
Is what- You're saying there are two views of it.
If we want to, I don't know if we
One.
want
I
to.
think Abby can maybe,
If Abby can
try to
flip to
find it.
that. So there is a view, but I believe it's sort of disassociated in that view.
it is,
right?
it's a gap view where there's the one building, former cast iron building that was shortened to 2 stories on Grand there.
And
All right.
Sarah, can I just ask,
Yeah.
just add one thing, which is simply that the issue with the fire escape is not whether it's original or not. And the issue is whether it's a decorative fire escape. Traditionally, we've sometimes required them to stay because they're historic. That's really the issue as opposed to whether it's historic or not. I just,
Right, so, or original or not.
Yeah.
So they typically were not original. They were historically added and
Yes.
on this particular building typology. And we have allowed removal where they are plain and where they're decorative. We've thought about it a little bit more, but as we heard from the Victorian Society's testimony, often we've thought about the underlying building and as part of that consideration and whether that improves the condition and or appearance. Commissioner Chapin?
Well, I think that in general, removing the fire escape is appropriate because of the very decorative facade and the fact that it does obscure it, even though I think this particular fire escape is unusually decorative. If it were just up to me, I would suggest they just keep the basket that's the lowest basket because it doesn't really obscure anything that decorative, and then you'd have a memory of it, similar to what we do with bulk lights, sometimes just, a memory of it as opposed to trying to preserve the whole thing. So that would have been my suggestion, but, I think on the upper stories, really, it certainly is okay to remove it, so. On the issue of the material on the rooftop addition, it's unusual because it's sort of set back and, sort of disassociated a bit. I could go along with it, even though it's an unusual material. If it were more prominent in the front, I wouldn't want to approve it.
Commissioner Goldblum?
Thank you. I think that saving the baskets is a good idea because they are unusually decorative. I understand the rationale behind removing them because it is such a robust facade. But I think for consistency's sake and because they are rather attractive and they do kind of create this very Soho-esque kind of layer of texture on the streetscape, I think that keeping the baskets is a good idea. And I think the material's all right. It's a little weird, but it's okay.
Okay. Commissioner Ginsburg?
I'm all right with removing the fire escapes. I don't have a strong opinion, but I would lean towards the material on the penthouse of being either metal or stucco. But if others are fine with it as is, I'm not going to complain.
Okay. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, it's the same here. I don't have a strong view on the material, but obviously it's better than stucco. So I leave that to the rest of the commissioner to how they want to decide on that. As for the basket, I tend to side with, this morning as I was walking down, doing my morning walk on the Chambers Street, I was taking a photograph of the shadow created by all the fire escapes, and it really does add to the texture. But I do understand Commissioner Mastro and Stephen's point of view, which is that if on the upper floors you obstruct the feature of that nice arches, then just on the lower floor you can retain the fire baskets.
Right, so 5 is Commissioner Chapin was suggesting just the first floor that wouldn't obscure the terracotta. Okay. All right, Vice Chair Bland.
Keeping tally.
I am.
I'm certainly not. I almost always happily, gladly get rid of fire escapes in their entirety when they're not needed and when they are obscuring a beautiful facade as this is. I find leaving the one basket, I'm not going to vote against it if that's the rule, but if that's the majority, but it's just an odd thing, I think. And regarding the minimally visible rooftop addition, I don't have a problem even with the travertine. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think where we are is we have a majority of commissioners supporting both components of this application. Jeannie, most of them are comfortable with the travertine, if you're okay with that. Okay, thank you. We'll do approval of both.
Of docket 24-05697, 40 Worcester Street, Soho Cast Iron Historic District. The store building designed by Buckman and Diesler and built in 1895 to 96. The application is to remove a fire escape and construct a rooftop addition. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. I further note that the commission approved a modification of use pursuant to section 74-711 of the zoning resolution in 2015, but that this special permit process was abandoned. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the proposed one-story rooftop addition will be set back from the front and rear facades and will only be visible from public thoroughfare over the secondary side facade from limited vantage points within the context of taller secondary facades of neighboring buildings and a variety of rooftop accretions, and will be in keeping with rooftop accretions typically found at industrial buildings throughout this historic district, that the rear facade of the top of the rooftop addition will feature tall, narrow windows and louvers that will not be visible from any public thoroughfare, that the pergola at the southwest corner of the addition featuring a retractable fabric roof shade will be simply designed with neutral finishes and will not call undue attention to itself. And that the proposed visible travertine cladding material of the addition at the south lot line facade will draw limited attention to itself and will be in keeping with utilitarian character of materials found at visible rooftop additions throughout the district, that the fire escape obscures decorative details at the facade, and its proposed removal will return the building closer to its original appearance, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Soho Cast Iron Historic District.
Chair Carroll. Commissioner Bland. Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum. Pardon?
No.
Yes. Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master. With 9 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 5, LPC 24-07947, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1381, Lot 38, 650 Park Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is an apartment building designed by John M. Cookins and built in 1962 to 63. The application is to alter the facade at the 2-story base, replace canopies, install a lift, and alter planters.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Sarah Scher from Higgins Quaysbarth and Partners. We are the historic preservation consultants for 650 Park Avenue. I'm joined today by my colleague Ward Dennis, as well as Krista Waring from CTA Architects, who will be available to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. So 650 Park Avenue is located at the southwest corner of East 67th Street and Park Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. It is a 21-story white brick apartment building that was constructed between 1962 and 1963. Landmarks describes it as a no-style building and designed by John M. Cockins. The proposal before you today is for the replacement of stone cladding at the base of the Park Avenue facade, and brick cladding at the ground floor of the East 67th Street facade with new marble veined porcelanosa cladding. The replacement of 3 planters that are on the Park Avenue facade, which you can see here, with new rectilinear planters, and the partial reconstruction of a planter on East 67th Street, with also a smaller planter that's also clad in the same porcelanosa cladding. This will all be done to match a historic rendering that we will see on the next page. So interestingly, the building was originally designed by Emery Roth and Sons, who's the design architect on the project, with John M. Calkins as the architect of record. And on the left-hand side, what we see is the rendering by Emery Roth and Sons, which was actually used to advertise the building when the units went up for sale in 1963. And the designation photo is on the right. And as you can see, in general, the buildings are similar in massing and fenestration. The main differences are this central bay of windows along Park Avenue, which were originally designed as tripartite with a large picture window in the center, were built with alternating double hungs and single lights in that wide masonry opening. And then the other difference is at the base of the building, which we'll look in more detail. But as you can see in this rendering, there was a black and white base that stretched along Park Avenue and then returned at the corner all the way down East 67th Street. And the as-built condition includes just a dark, sort of brownish, purplish granite that's only on Park Avenue. So Emery Roth and Sons, the original architects, they filed a DOB originally, and John M. Calkins, who was the AOR, was also the developer for the project, also the GC for the project, and at one point pushes Emery Roth and Sons out of the job and also makes these various changes to the project. So just a little color for why the design changed between this rendering and what was actually built at the site. So we're excited to bring back the original Emery Roth and Sons vision for the base of this building. So the building is actually undergoing extensive facade restoration right now, tying back the white brick, a lot of brick replacement with a new custom brick that's perfect match to the white brick. But that's all to say that there is a sidewalk shed up, so I'm using Google Street Views just to show the overall conditions along Park Avenue and East 67th Street. So at the top, that's the Park Avenue facade. As you can see, there's this brownish granite that is along the base with marble cladding flanking the central entrance. There is a central canopy that we'll be replacing to better match the rendering. And then those 3 planters in between the first and second floor you can see at the center. There's also this portal that wraps around the center. On East 67th Street, the bottom photo, as you can see, the brick cladding goes to the base of the building, and then there's a planter in the front that also has the brick cladding. And then some more detailed photos underneath the sidewalk shed. The top right photo, the very western end of East 67th Street, there is a garage entrance. There is some proposed work here, including curving off this planter so it's easier for cars to get into the garage, installing an ADA lift right here, and then replacing this existing metal and fabric canopy with a new fabric canopy that extends over the ADA lift to provide some weather protection. Bottom right photo shows that planter again along East 67th Street. There are existing large louvers in that planter that will be able to be removed as part of this project. More detailed photos along Park Avenue. So there's some variation in the sheen and color of some of the granite units. So we think there has been replacement units over time. Also, some units are cracked as existing. There's marble cladding flanking the entrance, which we see in the bottom right photo. And here's another, the top left shows the existing fabric and metal canopy, which is proposed to be replaced. So zooming in on that rendering that we looked at before, like I said, it's from a 1963 brochure that advertised the building and when it was first, the units went up for sale. So looking at this, we see at the ground floor a black and white design with a black trim that goes along Park Avenue, turns the corner and goes all the way down East 67th Street. We also see 3 planters over the entrance at the Park Avenue facade that appear to be rectilinear in design. We have a projecting canopy that's very slim and simple in design. And then the planter along East 67th Street is pushed away from the Park Avenue corner more so than our current condition and appears shorter than our current condition. So using that rendering as design basis for recladding the base of the building, we have existing on the left, proposed on the right, showing this new design with, and we're going to have some material samples as well, a new marble vein porcelanosa cladding with a matte white large format tile and a black tile with more of a sheen to it at the bottom and the top. There's a black tile at the center portal that we saw before, the rectilinear planters, and that simple canopy design. Here's the building looking at the corner, looking southwest. So the cladding wraps the corner and is brought all the way down East 67th Street. That planter is brought back to give more room at the Park Avenue corner and match the rendering better. And then also this canopy is that simple design that we see in the rendering. And then looking down at the western end of East 67th Street, you can see that curved planter to provide a better turning radius into the garage, this simple ADA lift, and then that canopy that exists is being replaced with something that can go over the ADA lift to provide some weather protection. Line drawings, starting on Park Avenue, existing on the top, proposed on the bottom. One of the great things about this project is all of these through wall louvers will be able to be removed as part of the scope as they're no longer functioning, and we'll have this new large format cladding. And then East 67th Street, again, you can see the planter, how it gets a little bit shorter and is brought in from the corner, and as well these large louvers will be able to be removed. And we'll look at the areaway in a little bit more detail. Those planters that I mentioned along Park Avenue, 3 between the first and second floor. The existing plan, there's a slight curve, but we see a more rectilinear design in the rendering. These will be cornered off. They'll be the same width and the same depth as the existing. Details of the canopy, the supports will have a polished chrome finish with a fabric top, and that intersection of the planter and the canopy will be similar to what exists where the fabric wraps around the planter. There's more canopy details we can go back to if there are any questions about this. So some details of that areaway that's at the western end of East 67th Street. In the top center photo, we're on the sidewalk looking down into areaway with planters on either side. There's an existing gate to provide storage space for the building. And then here above, you can see the fabric and metal canopy. These are drawings showing the proposed work at the areaway. The top left and the center show existing and proposed plans. So once again, you can see the curving of the planter. This is the area where the new ADA lift goes. And then an elevation on the right-hand side, this is the existing projection of the canopy. The new canopy will go over the ADA lift. So it'll be projected out a little bit further. There's also a life safety railing proposed right here. Cut sheet for the ADA lift, just to show it's simple in design and as small as possible. And then here are material samples. We also have material samples on the table showing the porcelanosa cladding. The white has more of a matte finish. The black has more of a sheen to it. This will be large format tile, so it will be 10 feet tall and a little over 2.5 feet wide. And then the bottom images on the left, we have the fabric color for East 67th Street, and on the right, the fabric color for Park Avenue. Oh, what happened to the end of the presentation? Okay. And then just some context for how Landmarks has regulated similar building types in the Upper East Side Historic District and the Carnegie Hill Historic District, specifically the base. So here we have 605 Park Avenue, which is a close by neighbor. And in 2016, there was an approval to replace the brick cladding on the side street and the stone and brick cladding on Park Avenue with a new marble base. A little earlier approval from 2004, 1050 Park Avenue in the Carnegie Hill Historic District, where a 1-story marble base was replaced with a 2-story limestone base. And then 790 Madison Avenue in Upper East Side Historic District, a 2010 approval to replace a one-story granite base with a two-story masonry base. So I think these examples give you a sense of the variety of bases historically at white brick apartment buildings, and also the regulatory diversity for these bases of these buildings. But we are going back to an original design. And just to end on a rendering, we're excited to bring back this vision of Emery Roth and Sons. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We do have some questions. Commissioner Goldblum?
What's the detail at the corners?
Kristen, do you want to? How the tiles can be there?
Krista Waring, CTA Architects. The tiles actually have grout in between them.
So at the corner, there'll be like a butt end and then a grout like that?
Oh, no, it's all custom fabricated, so they would chamfer that corner presumably.
Cool.
We would ask for that.
You're gonna get a pre-mitered corner.
Right, because these tiles here are just the samples that they send you, they're significantly thicker than that. They're not, they're either 12 millimeters or 20, which is roughly a half an inch or 3/4.
So no Schluter on this job.
Oh, God. I hate Schluter.
Just check. And what's the detail at the top of the coping? Where you have the low wall and then the what happened to the top of the coping?
Oh, well,
Planter and the
right,
left
right.
side, there's a little low wall.
I have to look at the rendering.
And also, is there a projection at the black stripe? Is that sticking out? Is that flush? And what's the relationship to the brick?
So I'll start with the black. So the black at the first floor shelf angle level would be flush with the brick above.
Uh-huh.
The black at the base of the building would be flush also, that we don't have anything projecting other than the framework around the second floor windows, the way it projects now. We haven't finalized the details for the top of the coping, but the idea is to have a monolithic look to it.
Okay. And the white porcelain is flush with the black, which is flush with the brick. It's all.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, other questions? All right, let's see if we have public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to speak on this item? Noting there isn't, I'll turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We currently have one participant with their hand raised, that being Zainab Tehran from Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Tehran, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you. Hello, Zainab Tehran, are you with us?
Yes, I'm sorry. This is Zainab Turan from Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District. Friends Preservation Committee does not object to recladding of the elements of the lower 2 floors with black and white marble. We do not object to the proposed canopies either. They are tasteful designs that fit well with the rest of the building and the immediate neighborhood. They further accentuate the building's entrance by increasing visibility. However, we question whether or not an unbuilt design from a historic brochure could be considered original. We were unclear about the rationale of this undertaking and therefore urge the clients to revise their project rationale. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised on the attendees list. So I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, so I don't know if you'd like to respond. The comments are largely supportive. Okay.
I mean, we think Emery Roth and Sons is a noted New York City architecture firm, and they were part of the original vision for this project, and we think it's appropriate to bring back their original design.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah, could you help me out? This, on the base level, you have this black tile. And then you have this large format, white tile. Do they just come, they just butt together?
Yeah.
There's no separation, there's no distance.
There is a joint,
It's just a
but
joint.
yeah, there's
This
just a
is
joint, but there's not.
And this wraps around the corner.
And it wraps.
Thank you.
Okay, any other final questions? All right, let's move to our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion on the modifications to this building, which despite being designed by Emery Roth is identified as a non-contributing building in the Upper East Side Historic District, or technically a no-style building. And the proposal is to modify the base to be more evocative of the brochure design by Emery Roth, and the applicant is shown, and we have, and as we know, we have approved changes to the bases of buildings in the multiple Upper East Side historic districts, and also the entire cladding on other no-style apartment buildings in the Upper East Side Historic District. So with that context, Commissioner Master, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I think overall, this is a good proposal. I think we're swapping out some material. And I think it's making the base of the building more attractive. I understand that we're adding back the planters on the second floor with the black, and I think that's also reminiscent of the original design, and I find that attractive and acceptable as well. I think we're replacing the canopy in the front, but I think it's in a similar location, and I think that's fine. I think we're moving back.
Barrier-free access lift.
Yeah, and then putting the canopy over the barrier-free, the lift, which I think is acceptable and makes a lot of sense. And I think we're doing something with the planters. I think we're shifting them, or
Yeah, they're getting sort of reconfigured. at the
yeah,
edges.
reconfigured. And I think overall, I think it's an improvement, and I can find it appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
I find the design really well done. I find how they handled the glass portion and the solid portion and worked it through very well handled in terms of design. I think the only issue I have is the heaviness of the poles holding up. The 6 inches is quite heavy. The original was thinner, but that's fine. I think they did an incredible job in just working it out. It's very handsome.
Okay.
In terms of the elevator, where am I? The canopy is appropriate, the installation of lift appropriate, or planters appropriate, the whole thing is well done.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I think in general,
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
I have deep reservations about one thing. The fact that this building is called the No Style Building. This is a modernist building by one of New York City's most famous architecture firms that clearly knew what they were doing in terms of style. This is a modernist building. And as such, I think it's very bold and praiseworthy that the applicants are kind of going with the flow, which is not what normally happens on these buildings. They usually get kind of neo-traditionalized out to some degree to make somebody think that it's really from, Rosario Candela or something. I think it's great that it's being kind of freshened up and made to be consistent with what is above. I mean, these buildings were meant to be shocking and new and fresh and white and kind of eyeball popping. And I think that the base that they've shown is kind of in that vibe. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the white of the tile, which will truly be quite white, looks with the white of the brick, which will not be truly quite white unless they're replacing it all. But I think it's great. I think that the key here, and it's really for the staff, is to walk around every little corner of this job and see that it flows, right? Because, you know, when you're doing a porcelain cladding of the thing, and once you get to these areaways or planters, how does it stop? How does it start? What's the top detail? What's the bottom detail? There was talk about the coping. It's all kind of, if they're going for this look, they just got to be consistent. I'm sure it sounds like they're thinking about it. The fact, you know, no Schluters allowed. And, you know, as long as it has a nice monolithic quality to it and it doesn't belie the fact that it's just tile, I think it's fine and appropriate and great.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree, it's appropriate and there's a nice refresh. I would also add that handicapped lifts tend to break down, so putting it under a canopy that will protect it is a positive thing, as it will hopefully be less likely to break down.
Commissioner Chen,
The nice thing of going last is that they said it all.
except Janella.
Thank you for that. Might get to say, the proof of this building, its style is that car. Proof of the building itself, style. I think it's all been said, as Commissioner Chen was about to say. So I think it's a great improvement, and I think that we said about the firm, the white brick is far distance from what the father was doing. Nonetheless, white brick on Park Avenue, well, that's not good, but it is what it is. I think it's being made much better like this.
Great, Commissioner Lutfi.
But I like the white brick better than the red brick, I have to say. So I agree with everybody. This refresh is terrific. I'm okay with the canopy. I actually love the canopy colors. The lift, the light, the porcelain tiles and the planters. I think I covered it all.
Yeah, and Commissioner Chu, you get the. good
No, the
position.
final say. I'm gonna depart from everybody. No, I think it's a handsome job. I think that the ground floor is much improved. The relationship especially on Park, as it is now, just smacks down on the ground. And I think this is a wonderful compression at the base. The only concern I have, and I think the applicant can work with staff, and I think I'm echoing Michael here, is that it's a porcelanosa tile. And I'm assuming if that's the sample thinner than the stone work that was done on the brown.
It will
cladding.
be thicker than that sample.
It will
but
be, okay,
Not as thick as the stone.
right. So I just want the applicant to work with staff because there's a lot of ins and outs that I'm questioning as I look at the rendering. And that's where it's gonna really play out. And last thing, I think that the white marble is appropriate, but I'd like the applicant again to look at with staff at that finish selection, because they make all kinds of slight shades. And I'm a little worried about the stark white against what is probably a dirty brick above it.
Yeah, and I think, well, they did say they were replacing a
Oh.
lot of the white brick, but we'll definitely look at samples.
Right, okay.
All right, so I think we'll do a motion to approve it, and we'll ask that you continue to work with the staff on those final details and finish selections. Okay.
In the matter of LPC 24-07947, 650 Park Avenue, Upper East Side Historic District, an apartment building designed by John M. Calkins and built in 1962-63. Application is to alter the facade at the two-story base, replace canopies, install a lift, and alter planters. I note that the building is not one for which the Upper East Side Historic District was designated. I note that the original architectural firm, Emery Roth and Sons, was superseded by John M. Calkins as the architect of record and an early brochure rendering of the building indicates that the existing condition does not match the original architect's design intent. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the proposed porcelain tile cladding resembling marble will replace a dark reddish granite at the base of the building, and the new materials palette will harmonize with the white brick above and will recall the original architect's design intent. That the use of the two-tone color palette with black two-story piers at the 3 central bays and white cladding along the base will reinforce the focal point of the 2-story entry portal on the Park Avenue facade. That the proposed curved and streamlined sidewalk canopy will reflect the original design and relates well to the building's main entry in terms of design and proportions. That changing the shape of the curved planters at the second floor bays above the entrance to rectilinear planters will maintain the basic rhythm and presence of greenery at these features. That removing the easternmost portion of the raised planter at 67th Street, lowering its height, and installing the porcelain tile cladding resembling marble will reinforce a harmonious, unified design. That the proposed barrier-free access lift will be modest in scale, simply detailed and finished to blend with its context. That the proposed modifications to the existing service areaway and planters at the 67th Street facade will be in keeping with the overall design and materials of the building. That the proposed shallow and wide canopy at the 67th Street facade will maintain the same footprint as the existing canopy and will extend only above the areaway, and that the proposed work will bring the building's base closer to its original design intent and enhance the special architectural and historic character of the streetscape, and that the applicant will work with staff in finalizing the details.
Thank you. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
Second.
And Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland, Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 10 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you.
Next item is public hearing item number 6, LPC 24-05668, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1389, Lot 127, 41 East 74th Street in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is a row house originally built in 1879 and altered with some classical details by Gurdon S. Parker in 1941. The application is to alter and redesign the facade, install a stoop, and construct rooftop and rear yard additions.
Hello, good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Carroll. My name is Robert Bianco with PKSB Architects, here representing the owners. Sorry, this microphone is a little low for me, for my height. Okay. Here representing the owners of 41 East 74th Street in the Upper East Side Historic District. We are located at the north side of 74th Street between Madison and Park Avenues. The scope of the alteration includes alterations at the front facade, a new stair and elevator bulkhead to the roof, and rear yard additions. The most publicly visible alterations, of course, will be at the street facade. On the left-hand side of the page is the existing brown stucco facade. On the right is our proposed brick and stone design. We are maintaining the overall building height, maintaining overall scale and size of upper floor window openings, introducing some ornamental stone detailing with the projecting cornice and stone window enframements. And we are realigning the lower floors to provide an accessible entrance at grade, as well as a new stoop and additional entrance at the parlor level. A little historic background on the building. This was originally part of a row of 5 townhomes designed by James Ware, all having mostly original facades, identical facades originally, all with generous stoops and entrance porticos. By the 1940s, in the tax photos on the top, you can see our building and our neighbor to the west had largely lost all of their original ornamentation, and by the time of designation, all of the buildings had been significantly altered, each in very, very different architectural styles. So at the top of the page is a full block photo montage from Madison Avenue to Park Avenue. Our building in the center here. And you can see the two buildings to the left, two buildings to the right were originally part of the James Ware Row, have been altered all in very different styles. On the bottom of the page, our design in the context of the full block, given that this block has seen so much alteration over the years, we felt that it was appropriate to introduce a design that responds to the variety of architectural styles and materials on this block that exists today. Some additional photos of the existing conditions. What exists today is a very simplified stucco facade with some classical detailing at the window lintels. The stoop was removed, the areaway was pushed back with a new iron gate introduced. Windows were replaced from 1/1 to 9/9. And I do want to point out can't read the text, but the designation report calls out the present style as having some classical detail, but no significant architectural elements except for compatible height. These are overall aerial views, just showing the overall scope of what we're proposing. Again, the alterations at the front facade, the stair and elevator bulkhead we are proposing will provide access to a new roof terrace. That bulkhead sits between a very large bulkhead at our neighbor's building and behind a very tall existing chimney on our building. Both of those structures are not visible currently. And based on these diagrams and some other visibility sections we'll show you, we're confident that these will not be visible. And just another aerial view. At the rear, we are proposing to push out our rear wall to align with the adjacent building to the east. Looking at precedents in the district, we looked at other similarly scaled townhomes. At the top of the page are 3 examples of other James Ware buildings in the district. The upper left is a pair of townhomes designed in the neo-Grec style with a prominent cornice and simple sort of window enframement details. In the center, at the top, another James Ware building in the Queen Anne style with a mix of stone and brick cladding. And on the right, originally designed by James Ware but altered in a more classical style with a mix of brick and stone detailing. And on the bottom of the page, other buildings on our block that use a mix of stone and brick cladding. These are 2 examples of other buildings in the district that by the time of designation, they had also lost all of their ornamentation and then were altered after designation in a very different architectural style. And these were both approved by the commission. And lastly, for precedents, just looking at other L-shaped stoops in the district, these are 3 different stoops, the historic photos on the top, existing conditions on the bottom that exist in the district today, and then some zoomed in cropped images of the 1940s tax photos of our neighboring buildings. These are the stoops that existed on our row. And you can see two doors down. It's a little hard to see in this photo, but there was an L-shaped stoop that was part of our row. We think probably because the sidewalk slopes down on that side, so additional risers were required. And we are proposing an L-shaped stoop for this project, and that configuration is related to the realignment of the lower floors. This is an existing building section. Currently, the building is entered by stepping down about 3 feet to the basement or garden level. Parlor level is about 7 feet above the sidewalk. This results in a cellar that has a very, very compromised ceiling height. It is not to code. It is less than 7 feet, and in some areas less than 6 feet. And what we are proposing is to raise that basement level up to be flush with the sidewalk. This accomplishes a couple things. This allows us to have an accessible entrance. We are providing an ADA elevator that will access every floor and the roof. And it allows us to increase the cellar ceiling height without having to dig down. We are proposing some excavation in the rear, but that's all beyond the current footprint of the adjacent historic structures. Upper floors will be maintained, upper floor framing and roof framing will be maintained. Front facade maintained except for the opening alterations at the lower levels, the L-shaped stoop, and the areas in red are the additions on the roof and the rear extensions. And this is just a short section cutting through that rear full height extension at the back of the building. Existing block elevation. You can see again the variety of architectural styles on this block or in this row. And what we are proposing, again, maintaining alignments of those upper floor windows and alignment of the window heads at this level. The sills will raise just slightly, about 6 inches, just to accommodate that floor realignment at the lower floors. And we are proposing window replacements. The configuration is 1/1, which was the original configuration on this building and is also a very common configuration on this block. Proposed materials are face brick, new face brick. The backup brick will be maintained. Limestone cornice, limestone cladding at the base, and cast stone lintels and sills. Black painted iron fence at the stoop and stained wood entry doors. This is the existing condition and our proposed. And just looking in the other direction, I'll note the building 2 doors down had a certificate of appropriateness approved in, I believe, 2007. They also restored a stoop. That was a straight run stoop, but that is an alteration. And our proposed design. And just looking a little more closely at the stoop design, at the top of the page is a replication of what the historic condition would have been with all of the stoops. You could see the building 2 doors down with its L-shaped stoop. What exists today at the bottom of the page, our areaway has been pulled back to the property line, and our neighbors has as well. However, all of the other buildings in this row, and in fact, every other building on this block has some sort of projection beyond the property line. And what we are proposing will align with our neighbors and will not project any further into the sidewalk than what existed historically. This is just a schematic detail just to show that only the outer layer of brick and the existing stucco will be removed. Backup brick will remain. New face brick or stone cladding at the base will be added. Comparison at the base, existing condition at the top, proposed at the bottom, and some enlarged views of that base and stoop. We are not proposing what may be traditionally associated with a building of this style, with stoops that would have higher, more ornate stone detailing at the balustrades. Because this stoop is taller than what would have originally been on this building, we are limiting the height of the sidewalls to just a little curb and doing a more open iron metal gate at the, metal fence at the stoop. These are just additional visibility diagrams, plans, and section, just showing that we are set back further than and in the same height range as adjacent rooftop structures that are not currently visible. And the addition of the new cornice, which projects further than what exists today, will help mask anything that's up on the roof. And lastly, the rear yard. This is what exists today. We have a 3-story L-shaped addition projecting into the rear open space, and the upper 2 stories are set back further. Standing in our rear yard, looking both east and west, you can see there are many other multi-story additions or extensions that project into that rear open space. And this is a historic 1916 map. You can see our row of 5 has always been a bit of an anomaly on this block. The other townhomes on this block had additions with much larger footprints, ranging from 2 stories to 4 stories. So this is our graphic interpretation of that historic block map showing the solid to open space. And this is what exists today. You can see on the avenues, larger scale development has encroached on that open space. There have been some other further additions over the years in some of the other rear yards. I do know of 2 rear additions that were commission approved. One was a couple of years ago. Our neighbor to the north, we share part of our rear lot line here. This is 38 East 75th. This was I think a stepped 3-story rear addition that was approved in 2022. And our neighbor 2 doors down, part of our row, had an extension of an existing 3-story addition. So they added a floor on top. And what we are proposing is to push out our rear wall to align with our neighbor to the east, and a modest 2-story addition beyond that will project, that will extend to the 30-foot required rear yard line. So existing condition at the rear with the neighboring buildings for context. Proposed. Again, we are maintaining alignments of the windows at the upper stories. 2-story extension at the bottom, and we are realigning the level of the yard simply because we are raising that floor. And materials at the rear, similar to the front facade, also brick cladding, cast stone for the lintels and sills. Windows in the rear will be black painted aluminum clad wood windows. The front, we're doing white. And existing condition at the rear. This is that 1-story extension that was approved in 2007. You can see the other buildings all have their rear facades in different planes. Our neighbor to the west has a 1-story full width addition that I believe was done prior to designation, as well as this extension of the 3-story also prior to designation. And what we are proposing does not project any further into the open space than any of our neighboring structures, maintaining the upper floor overall window scale at the 2-story extension, smaller punched openings, and then a large glass opening at the ground floor. And we can just end on a quick reminder of the front facade design, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have some questions, Commissioner Goldblum, followed by Commissioner Ginsburg.
Okay, thanks. So this facade, the details around the windows, are they the same as you go up or do they change? Window enframements.
They are the same as,
They're the same.
as you go up.
Are the
yeah.
windows the same size? One, two,
They're
three?
they're basic, yes, they're the same size.
Okay.
The parlor level, just because of the realignment of the floors,
Mhm.
we discussed with staff, typically the parlor level would be taller.
Right.
There is a slight variation here, the side pieces
Mhm.
extend down
Right.
and meet the base in a different way than the upper stories. So that is a difference.
And
The
is-
first floor is different.
Is the face brick on the front and the face brick on the back the same?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
So first question, you said that historically the windows were 1/1.
Yes.
I'm looking at this historic photo that looks like it's 9/9 from the 1940 tax photo.
Correct. Yeah, that was an alteration, the 1940s.
Okay,
The-
well, this gets to my second question. The only documentation we have is the 1940 photo, which looks very much like the existing. What makes you say any of this relates to anything before 1940 without any photographs or other drawings?
Well, I don't think we're trying to relate to anything that existed prior. Every building in this row has been significantly altered from the original.
but you
So there isn't,
Okay, but you said before it was 1/1 and then the 1940 was a modification. What
Correct.
do you base that on?
just, we base that on the photos of the other buildings in the 1940s tax photos, which still had their 1/1 windows.
Couldn't it be the other way
They-
around,
they
that they
could
were
have been.
changed and the
They-
9/9 were the
They
original?
could have been, but we think that 1/1 was typical for the Queen Anne style at that time.
I think the sort of historic pattern that we find on the Upper East Side Historic District is that in the 19th century, row houses were built speculatively and in neo-Grec styles and some of those other late 19th century styles with brownstone facades and stoops, and typically had 1/1 double hung windows at that time. And then in the early 20th century, there is a sort of a wave of revisions that happened to the houses on an individual basis, where some were stripped, some were stripped and classical details were added to sort of classicize them, and some were their facades were removed entirely and a new facade was built out to the property line, usually in a more classical style like the Beaux-Arts style. So the early 20th century sort of introduced the kind of neoclassical elements like the multi-light windows. So this particular building was stripped and did have, I guess, multi-light windows as part of that tradition in the early 20th century. And I'm not sure if they still had them at the time of designation, but our designation report said in the entry, it says some classical detail, which would refer to some of the later details of the early 20th century, and no significant architectural features except compatible height. So it didn't sound like at the time of designation there were any other significant features other than some of the applied classical ornament. So then the question is, right, lots of times we have, particularly with buildings of no style, but even some that are just altered, we have approved redesigns that are inspired by those classical designs of the early 20th century. This is sort of doing a little bit of both, right? It's sort of trying to go back to the 19th century with a stoop and some of the neo-Grec details and the 1/1 windows, but also kind of relating to, I guess, the variety that you described on the streetscape. So I think that's maybe what Commissioner Ginsburg is sort of wanting you to speak also a little bit more about your philosophical approach to this.
I think it goes to exactly what you were saying. We're keeping in the spirit of change that has occurred, particularly in this row, but on the block in general. The Queen Anne style is not really prevalent on this block anymore. We have a mix of materials specific, really in our row. Our neighbor next door is a more neo-Georgian design with a lot of brick. And I think the choice of the lighter stone rather than brown stone, which may have been traditional, was an effort to kind of brighten up this facade. Currently within the row, it stands out as a little understated.
All right, Commissioner Chapin and then Commissioner Jefferson.
So, you're largely trying to pursue the neo-Greek style with some alterations but one of the things that the proportions of the lower floors and the stoop are not only unusual for that, but just unusual. So where do you take inspiration for how that's going, so to speak?
Yes, well, yeah, the stoop proportion is unusual simply because of when you're trying to provide accessibility, you have a full story rather than a half story. But that is why we looked at reducing the bulkiness of the sidewalls of that stoop. And we felt that there's precedent on this block for turning the stoop, kind of manipulating the details of the stoop itself to sort of reduce its proportion. We felt it was important to maintain the stoop because once you're introducing an entrance at the sidewalk level, the addition of the stoop helps to bring back that sort of buffer zone areaway between the public and private, the public sidewalk and the private entry. So we understand the challenge of the proportion, but I think it's in the details that we are striving to make that proportion more appropriate.
So a lot of it is being driven by the accessibility issue and how you're trying to design around that problem and still.
That's part of it. That's a big part of it, yes.
Okay.
Okay, and just a follow-up with, okay.
So I understand you need to raise the floor to make it accessible. Why do you need to put the stoop in? Can't somebody go in at the ground floor and
Sure.
get to every floor?
Yes, and as I said before, we felt the stoop was important in bringing back that sort of transition zone and that sense of separation between public and private.
Thank you.
And also, and in having the stoop and the option to end, this is a single family home, so both doors could be used by the occupants. Having that more grand entrance at the more traditional parlor level just reintroduces a historical element.
Commissioner Jefferson.
The question I had to do with you raise the ground floor 4 feet, right, about. And the head of the door, that head piece, how tall is that? If you go to the elevation, the entry door has a decorative piece that's about 2 feet. Right? Yeah, you see the top.
I'm not positive of the dimension. It's the height of the door itself.
Yeah.
It's about 8 feet.
You see, it's taller than the window. It's way above the window.
It is taller than the window. Well, the lintel detail goes above the window lintel.
It's fine. So because of the curve, that's why the scale is slightly off. I got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah. Yeah, let me just, Commissioner Chu.
Sorry, just to clarify the elevation, you adjusted the window opening.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Children, yeah.
Has the third floor moved up as well to accommodate
a rise in the parlor level?
Slightly, yes.
Yeah, okay, so have adjusted up
Yes.
to the upper floors
Yes,
too.
this floor
Has
is a
gotten
slight,
raised.
is a slight adjustment, so
Yeah.
the sill raises,
Raised
but
up.
the head is in the
Okay.
same place.
Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
The elevator override, quite tall, tall the elevator.
It is,
I haven't seen one.
it's 13.6, which is typical.
Thank you.
Because this elevator is serving the roof, so that additional height is required.
All right. Any other questions? Let's see if we have public testimony. I'll note that there's no one in the hearing room to speak on this item, so I'll turn it to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a couple of remote participants with their hands raised. The first we'll be hearing from is Zainab Tehran from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Tehran, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Carroll and Commissioners. This is Zainab Tehran from the Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District. The Friends Preservation Committee has reservations regarding the proposed design. While we appreciate the proposal retains the proportion, alignment of the facade, we cannot support the stoop as it appears bulky and it narrows the sidewalk. We also question the limestone for base and stoop that further isolates the stoop from the building. By raising the lower floor levels, the design creates an access issue in the first place. Then it attempts to address this issue with a steep stoop that turns into an L shape. We are also uncomfortable with the choice of white for the cornice, which is incompatible with the neighbors and not a color generally found on cornices in the district. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from John Graham from the Victorian Society of New York. John Graham, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. So please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. The Victorian Society often testifies in favor of preserving comprehensive early 20th century alterations to row houses. These alterations can include stoop removals, creation of picturesque features like iron balconies, window boxes and shutters, studio windows, and so on. We think the Commission does not always recognize these changes as significant alterations worthy of preservation. The case for their preservation was articulated clearly at the last public hearing by Professor Andrew Dolkart of Columbia University. We are testifying on this proposal because, as far as we can determine, the 1941 alteration to this row house does not fall into the category of a significant alteration worth preserving. It's a late example, and while it was more than a simple stripping of the facade, we don't think the addition of the arched stucco lintels with their somewhat streamlined keystones is enough to warrant its preservation. If any of the original facades from this row remain, we would urge that this new facade replicate that design. As a standalone design, however, we find that the proposal appropriately looks to the historic styles of buildings on this block. The traditional details of the proposed facade will make a coherent, pleasant, and compatible addition. We urge approval. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Lo Vandervalk. Lo Vandervalk, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Lo Vandervalk. I'm speaking on behalf of Carnegie Hill Neighbors. We were asked by the applicant to comment on this project, and we are in favor of it. We think there are various elements that have been discussed in some great detail that are worthy to note. We think if you look at a section, we think the additions are very modest. which is something we are always concerned about. And there's not an effort here to try to maximize the possible space. We think that the front facade, treatment of the front facade is appropriately done and makes the building and the row look much better. On the stoop, we think it's admirable to try to restore the stoop. It's clear it will not be straight, but it will be L-shaped because of the challenges of the height that needs to be covered. But we think and it does create the areaway that becomes private, but we think we would favor that because it does not exceed the areaways of its neighbors. Finally, we think the rear treatment allows for more light and air. And I just want to comment that James Ware was a Columbia University professor of architecture and felt strongly about light and air, and was in fact a pioneer in the redesign of the tenements. And I think that the rear yards of this original rear yards reflect James Ware's concern with light and air for the rear. So, and I think the rear changes are very nicely executed. That's the extent of our comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have some support, but there were some concerns sort of largely around the raising of the basement level.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've discussed the stoop alteration. But I did want to comment on one of the comments made by the Friends of the Upper East Side about the coloring. There is precedent on our block and in the district for lighter colored stone cornices. So we're looking to those as precedent.
Neo-federal or neo-Georgian.
Yeah, and our neighbor next door. It's not quite a cornice, but there's a stone balustrade next door.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Let's close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And so as I sort of outlined earlier, many of us know that this is a district with sort of multiple layers of significance. The original row houses were built in late 19th century styles, typically in brownstone. And in the early 20th century, we saw lots of different changes to the row houses to give them more of a classical appearance, of neoclassical style, in different neoclassical styles. And that often involved removing the stoop, stripping the facade, and sometimes adding ornament, and then sometimes adding a whole new facade at the property line. And that's usually when you saw the shift in the floor levels, and would have a sort of grand Beaux-Arts entrance at the sort of a couple steps up from the sidewalk. And so this is a proposal to improve this facade, which the designation report describes as having no significant architectural features. And it does so by trying to return some of the 19th century appearance, but also speaking to some of the early 20th century, mostly palette, I think, and the variety that you see on the streetscape. And so we'll have our discussion about that. There are also the rear additions that are before us as well. So Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this one?
Sure. This is a really interesting proposal in a very subtle way. It violates many of the tenets of the styles that it touches upon, and as such, it's in a very peculiar way. It's a very modern or postmodern project. If you would never see a Queen Anne or neo-Grec building with this light palette. You would never see it with or rarely, I don't recall seeing it with a stone cornice. You would surely see this palette on more neoclassical buildings or federal buildings. Yet the detailing is resolutely Queen Anne. The format of the building in terms of levels is definitely more along the lines of the renovated 1920 style Upper East Side buildings where you walk right in or you walk up a couple of steps. And yet the stoop is recalling again a more Victorian period. So it's a really novel mishmash of these two styles. I think that that's not an inappropriate thing to do, given the location, where, you know, rampant, extreme modifications of the front facades are fairly normal. Certainly on this block, you can see plenty of it. And I guess, you know, the things about it that I think bear consideration are the things that kind of look off when trying to play that game, right? That balance between, you know, like a mishmash of the neo-Greek and the neo-federal or whatever. And I think issue number one is the base and the stoop. I think you can't make the stoop go away by simplifying its details and its railings. It just won't. So I think that the simplification of the details and of the base and of the railings is ineffective in that it looks like you kind of ran out of gas in terms of design energy. It doesn't minimize it. It doesn't achieve a lighter or more elegant or more transparent or whatever you want to call it, big ass stoop. I think it just looks boxy and undercooked. So I think that they should revisit. They could probably do that with staff. The details of the railings and of the stoop and of the cladding at the first floor. I think also they might look at the graduation of the windows on the front facade. Almost always with buildings of that nature, you see some variation as you ascend. You can see it in the line drawing of the house two doors over. You know, there's some play or a belt course or something that recognizes the scale. It tends to have a little bit of a multifamily look to it, to my eye, and I don't think that was the intention. But I think these are all modest comments. I don't think there's anything. I agree with John Graham about the approvability of removing the front facade, which itself is an interesting mishmash of brownstone and neo-federal. But there's nothing significant about it to warrant its retention. It is worth noting this building is going to have a modern facade, so it will have weep holes and normal jointing and normal brick, which will give it a different effect. It's not going to look like a 1910 building, no matter what the style. So I think that that's important to keep in mind. I think that the applicant should look with the staff at the details of the window and enfranements and the portico to make sure that they don't look clunky and kind of insincere, that they have the level of detail that this neo something or other building is going for. The only comment I have on the back, which I think is generally appropriate, is that I think the top floor should be retained in its plane as an expression of the volume of the building and as a nod to its lone leftover neighbor from the row.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Well, let me start by saying what I can approve, which is I have no problem with the rooftop addition. I have no problem with the rear work, except for the point Michael made. I'd agree keeping the top floor. I have no problem with raising the floors to make the ground floor accessible. With that said, I can't approve this as is. For 85 years, there has been a facade there that we know was there in 1940. I find what is being proposed not based on any, that isn't matching the adjacent facade. We have no records of what was there before. So it's basically made up. And I just think that that's pretty inappropriate. So I can't approve it as is. But if you retain the existing facade and make the modifications you need to make the ground floor entrance fully accessible. I find the stoop very ungainly, and there's no way to hide that it's really too big. And so I would not put in the stoop, and I guess I've made it fairly clear, keep the existing facade as much as possible.
Right. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I think there are a couple common denominators on the comments, even from, I think the stoop does require work, and I think that I have no problem with the leveling of the floors, the readjustment of the floor. I think that's fine. Just like Michael and Commissioner Ginsburg, I have no problem with the rear. I would leave it to the majority what they want to do with the top floor. I do agree with Michael that the front facade, and Chair Carroll, you mentioned the same thing, which is that historically we have allowed, a common in this way. So I have less of a problem, but obviously, this mixing of the different styles and the proportion, I think this is the part that needs further study.
Okay. Vice Chair Bland?
I'm not sure I have a lot to add, although this block, this row, and the Upper East Side in general has taken such a free hand in revising and revising and revising these townhouse fronts that, in a way, almost anything goes if it's done well, and if it's done kind of coherently. And I think this is not to say it's incoherent at all, but I do think it needs more work. But I would say subtle work. No, I don't think a whole makeover is necessary. I think the stoop is maybe the problem. I mean, this did have a stoop, so anyway, I'll leave it at that rather than going into all the little details. I think I just think it's probably going to be reworked a bit, tweaked a little. From my point of view, tweaked, not wholesale, remade.
Commissioner Lutfi?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the comments of my fellow commissioners. For me, the biggest issue is the stoop. It's just too bulky, and I think also the color is just, it sticks between the bulk, the height, and the color. It just really sticks out like a sore thumb. I can accept some of the other things on the facade.
Okay. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I think for the rear, I would agree to retain the facade of the top floors we've traditionally upheld in most of our renovation applications. The style thing on this one is really tough for me to it. I do feel that the two issues I have most concern with is proportion and the stoop being added. Part of me likes it because I do feel that when stoops were removed, that a lot of facades were unceremoniously just defaced. And there's a natural sense of the stoop and arrival to get into this building that I see here, but it doesn't feel right yet. And I think part of it is also just because of the height and the climb. I really object to this putting a volume right out in front of you. I think it's pushing you away from the facade and not inviting you in, which the stoop typically does. And that's probably because of the L shape. And the height of the landing at that turn is so high that it's like a person is blocked there. Yeah, I think the applicant needs to work on it. Of course, there's only so much you can do when you can't change the plan dimensions. I keep looking at this and I want the stoop to feel like an addition to the volume as opposed to this solid piece out in front. And because this is such a mishmash of style and not really true to any historic style, I don't know, in my mind, I was thinking, try curving the corner of the stoop. There are stoops that have curves and they do help feel that it actually move around and it's not just a big obstruction on that corner lot line. That's what I have to say.
Okay, great, thanks. Commissioner Master?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with a lot of the comments that were made. In terms of the rear facade, I think Commissioner Goldblum had a good suggestion of keeping the top floor. But then everything else is fine. On the roof, the bulkhead, everything is fine. The stoop, I think, has to be reworked with staff. And perhaps, they can also look at some of the finer details in the front facade.
Commissioner Jefferson?
The construction of the rear yard addition, I think it's fine. The rooftop addition, I think is fine. I think this entry staircase, if we took away the metal railing and made it just heavy, just a big heavy thing, would be fine with me. I mean, it just, and the proportion could remain, it's just a big juicy staircase.
All right, Commissioner Chapin.
Situation. I mean, obviously, you've got proportions which are odd that are sort of driving this in part because of it. And normally you'd probably have, a door at the, a second door or something instead of the stoop. But granted, they want to do the stoop, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to do. I think that it really seems too heavy, and it needs to, there are a variety of ways you could try to achieve having it not have that very, presentation that's really drawing your eye to the stoop, and I think making the proportion change even more obvious and troublesome. So I think that's the first two floors there, and particularly the stoop are the problem. As far as the back and the rooftop, that's fine, and I don't have any problem really a lot with anything with the rest of the facade and the way they're trying to address that. I think in general, there was some comments about some small modifications to that. But I think, they need to figure out a way to deal with the stoop and how it's not only the weight, but how it's relating to those unusually proportioned parlor windows in the basement there.
Okay. All right. So thank you all for your thoughtful comments. Yes, Commissioner.
Just to add, responding to what Stephen had said, which I think is correct. Another thing you could think about is to look at other L-shaped stoops. A lot of them have kind of facade elements. They're not just like boxes. Some of them have arches or windows or penetrations or shallow
Ramps.
penetrations or niches or things like that that kind of make them into a facade. And also, I think you're allowed, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I think you're allowed to have winders on a single family entry steps. I don't think that, especially if it's not the main entrance, because you do have an on-grade entrance. So winders would allow you to lower the stoop, that triangle on the front as well.
Okay. All right. So I think we're going to take no action. I know one commissioner in particular is not comfortable with the general kind of entire reworking of this in a sort of hybrid style that is just sort of made up. But I think many of the other commissioners are comfortable with this stylistic approach and kind of the mixing of styles given the eclectic character on this particular streetscape. But that there are still some proportion and detail work that needs to be done around the stoop and how it interacts with the raising of the floor levels and the window proportions going up the facade. And so we'll take no action, and we'll ask you to go back and look at the detailing and the proportions of the stoop and its relationship to those windows, and we'll have you back when you're ready. And the rear facade, I think most commissioners did ask that the top floor be retained in plain anyway. All right. Okay, so we're going to take no action on that one. Thank you all. We're going to move to the next item. And before we do, I do have to apologize, but I need to leave early today, so Vice Chair Bland is going to take over for me. If the hearing should go on beyond 4, Commissioner Goldblum will take over, but I don't think it'll take that much longer to get through the next 2 items. Two. All right, thank you all very much.
We'll go ahead and move to the next item, public hearing item number 7, LPC 24-07956, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1504, Lot 69, 1115 Fifth Avenue in the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District. This is a neo-Renaissance style apartment building designed by J.E.R. Carpenter, built in 1925 to 26, and the application is to replace the curtain wall of the penthouse and install windows.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Erin Rowley, Higgins Place Martin Partners. Slides. So here we have, we're here for 1115 Fifth Avenue with a penthouse that you see right here. I'm joined by Henry Jessup and David Caridi of HS Jessup. They're the project architects. Sarah Ripple from HQ, and on Zoom we have Jonathan Hernandez from GMS Engineering, who is the project engineer. I'm going to take us through the whole presentation, and then the whole team is available for any questions you might have. So here we have 1115 Fifth Avenue. It's on the southeast corner of 93rd Street and Fifth Ave in the Carnegie Hill Expanded Historic District. And we're going to be talking about the penthouse, which we also see right here along the Fifth Avenue facade of along the west side of the building. And the proposal is to reconstruct the glazed wall, the glazed enclosure, as that's part of the penthouse. It's due to the structural conditions that the existing enclosure was built in 1929, 3 years after the building was completed, and it rests on the parapet. It's causing significant structural conditions at both the parapet itself and the window wall of the enclosure. And so, and the existing enclosure has been modified significantly over time. And proposal here we see is a new contemporary system. It matches the height of the historic enclosure and follows the vertical rhythm, the proportion of the bays and the mullion rhythm across the facade. We think it's certainly an improvement over the existing condition and allows for the long-term preservation of the building and reconstruction of the parapet as part of the project. So here we have the original building constructed in 1925-26, designed by J.E.R. Carpenter. It's a 14-story neo-Renaissance building. And what this is the building here, and with this very tall parapet. It was originally constructed with this sort of typical penthouse enclosure. So it was set back from the face of the building itself. And then by 1929, the penthouse had been extended out to the parapet, and you see it had this very sort of unique glazed enclosure system. At that time, the building was, the penthouse was a triplex. So it was the penthouse level plus the 2 floors below. It was originally owned and occupied by Theodore Viker, who was one of the founders of SWIB, which is now Bristol Myers Squibb. And he worked with an artist and designer named Vinol Bryce on the design of the apartment. It had a very elaborate interior decoration that was completed in 1926-27, and we don't have documentation to know if Rice was also responsible for the enclosure, but he certainly designed the apartment itself, but the enclosure was done just 2 years later, and it's unclear who was responsible for the design. So as you can see, the enclosure was always in the plane of the primary facade, had this very sort of elaborate glazing system, sort of deco inspired and distinct from what was happening on the lower portion of the building. The enclosure was altered significantly over time. On the left, the 1940s tax photograph, so we're still seeing that original 1929 condition. By the 1980s,
Here in the 1980s tax photo at the top right, the north end had been expanded. There was a bay added here, and windows had been replaced within the lower portion of the enclosure. By the time of designation, additional windows had been replaced. The whole lower section, the whole north wing of the enclosure had its windows replaced. And this circa 2004 photograph, it gives us an idea of what it looked like roughly at the time of designation, with all of the windows replaced along that lower north line, and then some of the decorative glazing remaining in the taller portion at the south end of the enclosure. Here is the existing condition today. Sometime around 2004 or 2005, all of the windows were replaced in the taller section of the at the south end of the penthouse, and then the roof was altered. There is added roof level in here. And then it's all wrapped in this metal flashing. There's also added roofing on top of the tall section, but the lower section here is roughly at the original height of the north wing of the enclosure. And what you see here is structure from the 1929 enclosure, and then all contemporary windows. So these vertical mullions all are the thing that was added in 1929. And as you can see in this lower photograph, it's resting right on the parapet, and that's where the load is bearing on the parapet itself. This is just a color diagram to give you a sense of how the changes have occurred over time. Red is indicating the original structure of the penthouse enclosure. Green is sort of that first generation of change that happens before the 1985 photograph. And then there are some alterations in the late 1980s, and those are marked in this sepia color. And that includes that sort of brown fascia along the top, and the window replacement in sort of the center of that north wing. And then in 2004, we get that metal fascia and the roof changes along the entirety of the penthouse, and the window replacement in the south wing. Just to give you a sense of what this looks like on the interior, the penthouse itself, the 1926 penthouse, had a tall section and a low section. So we see in this interior photo, here's the tall portion at the south, and then it steps down for the lower section. And then to the left, we see this is the historic structure of the 1929 enclosure extending out toward the parapet here. And to the right here, we see there are fragments of windows that have been enclosed. This is the brown fascia that I pointed out in the last photograph. That is what's covering this row of windows. So the glazing height was actually much taller in the historic condition than what we see there today. At the bottom, this is just the structure of the 1929 addition, the enclosure of what was originally the terrace. And then over time, there have been structural interventions to try to relieve the burden on the parapet. Here you can see a secondary system that's been added and trying to take the load off of the parapet. But what then happened is that it was all fastened, bolted to the parapet, which just put the load right back on the parapet. And so that is not a good long-term solution for the building or the apartment itself. So here we see the existing and proposed and overall elevation, and we'll move to the details here. So we did a lot of homework, both in terms of probes and trying to understand what exists to be able to match up to the historic height of both the roof line and the glazing height. And so we see in colored elevation matching the rhythm of the vertical divisions, the mullions, major and minor mullions, and then the roof, the cornice line of that matches up with the historic condition. So getting as close as possible to those elements that we can verify, those elements that exist within the sort of sandwich of the roof today. So here is the existing and proposed section, structural section. So the historic roof line, and then above that, you can see where the fascia, the added roofing system that's resting above that and wrapped in the metal cladding. Below that, the window wall comes down and rests right on the parapet. We have that secondary structural system that was added right behind it, and then attaches to the parapet itself. In the proposed section, the height matches the historic cornice line of the penthouse. The windows will come down. They will still be located at the parapet, but the new structural system will be behind it. And there will be cantilevers or outriggers to support that window wall and carry it down to the main structure of the building. So it takes it off of the parapet and onto the main structure of the building, which includes this new flooring system and beams to transfer the load all the way through. Similarly, this is in the tall section, again, matching up the height of the historic roof line and the window wall. So everything stays in the same plane that it was historically, matching those conditions, and then carrying down the new structural system within that. And again, the glazing height is matching what was there historically. It's not getting any taller than was there. It's just that in the existing condition, things are all clad over, and they have retrofitted windows within the enclosure itself. Moving to the secondary elevations, on the the east elevation, we see here, this is 1980s alterations, this little pop out and the stucco facing and the windows themselves. This is proposed to get new windows within that location. We have limited visibility of these windows. We'll take a look at that. This is the east facing terrace off of the back of the apartment. And then on the south elevation, this is the lot line wall. It is adjacent to the Jewish Museum, the addition to the Jewish Museum. And we'll be proposing one new lot line window there. And then this view, just showing you what it looks like from the north looking south, the penthouse. This is the adjacent penthouse's terrace, as is this wall. They control all of this space at that location. And so here's the proposal. The adding that exists new window in line with the windows below. They would be single light casements to match what's happening below and the aesthetic of the penthouse itself. And then on the south elevation, replacing all of these windows. That 4-part window gets replaced in kind, and then new single light windows in the pop out projection. These are not visible from the street. We'll look at the visibility studies, and then a new doorway here. Here's a plan that shows you the existing condition. These are actually steps down. There's no wall between this. I should have pointed that out in the existing conditions photo, but the interior wall that would have been the exterior wall of the penthouse originally was removed in the 1980s. So it's just been structured. It's one continuous floor. So when that triplex that originally existed was divided up in the 1940s and 50s into 3 separate units. So this is the entirety of the apartment. So the glazed enclosure really is the apartment itself. It's not a terrace. It's not a greenhouse. This is the living room and the bathroom and the bedroom of the existing unit. And this is the proposed plan. So it keeps that continuity of space between the public and private spaces of the unit itself and integrates the new window wall. And then here, just to give you a sense of the visibility, the overall view from 92nd Street looking up, you can see the rear of the building. And in a zoomed view, you'll catch a glimpse of that 4-part window, but we don't see the window on the bump out enclosure or the door. And similarly, as we step back a bit farther along 92nd, that is the same view we'll have. We'll also see the new window on the lot line on this second wall. And then just a few views along the avenue to give you a sense of the overall context. This is the location in the normalized view and then zoomed in. So we would get that second window here and then the replaced enclosure and looking second along from the bridle path in the park. The building is in the distance here, and this is the existing view. And that's the proposal.
Questions, Commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Quick question, which isn't totally germane to what we're looking at, but I think you may have some accessibility issues with the renovated apartment. And I don't know if you've looked at that, but I'd rather you didn't come back to us because something.
Sure. David Carini from HS Jessup Architecture. Yes, there's a step, there will be steps up from the entry hall into the rest of the apartment. There are steps up currently the steps will be less dramatic than they are currently. And we're hopeful that we have a good argument for it.
Thank you.
Questions? No. Okay. We'll turn to the room. Anybody in the room would like to offer testimony? Don't see anybody. Gregory, do you have people online?
Yes, we have a couple of hands raised on our attendees list. The first we'll be hearing from is John Graham from the Victorian Society of New York. John Graham, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Okay. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. We are testifying in this proposal because of the extreme visibility of the penthouse from the Central Park scenic landmark. Because the glass penthouse extension was a very early addition to this building, we will not argue against its presence. Its redesign, however, should be directed towards making it as unobtrusive from the park as possible. A comparison of the existing and proposed elevations, as shown on slide 3, illustrates that the proposed penthouse facade is more visible and obtrusive than the existing. This appears to be due to the very large panes of glass and the dark color of the framing and cornice. We recommend smaller window divisions, more in keeping with the other windows on the building, and a neutral tone for the framing. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Zainab Tehran from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Tehran, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Chair Carroll and commissioners, this is Zainab Tehran for the Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. Friends Preservation Committee recommends approval of the proposal, which offers a well-considered and respectful approach to safeguarding the historical character by repairing the damaged parapet and rebuilding exterior to match historic details and materials. The proposed structural intervention will include cantilevered support for windows on all sides to relieve the overburdened original parapet, while keeping the lines of the mullions of the original 1929 design. The new structure is an elegant alternative to the existing penthouse structure with degraded windows and metal fascia. Friends also commends the client for providing comprehensive architectural drawings, facilitating a clear understanding of the project. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Lo Vandervalk from Carnegie Hill Neighbors. Lo Vandervalk, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
My name is Lo Vandervalk. I'm representing the views of Carnegie Hill Neighbors. First, let me acknowledge that the project looks like it was put together with great care and well executed. However, we have problems with the existing effectively grandfathered penthouse, which is very large, very visible. And three aspects of that are the curtain glass windows facing west to Fifth Avenue. In our view, there's too much glass, but we recognize the historic background. Also, second, especially the tall windows for the large room at the south end of the penthouse. And third, the windows are flush with the front facade actually placed on the top of the parapets, so without substantial setbacks, and this makes it even more visible. But we recognize the priority that grandfather bestows. Hence, mitigations may be the most feasible route to a better, more appropriate outcome. We see the most possible mitigations as first, introducing a setback from the parapet, the west facing windows. And that doesn't have to be a big setback. It can be 1.5 to 2 feet. But only at the south end, meaning the large southwest room, not the rest of the parapet, which is less visible from the street, or less rest of the windows. Second, lowering the height of the west-facing windows at the large southwest room. But the setback may be more important in terms of impact than the height. We would agree to a more glazing on the south facade, maybe make the windows slightly larger, maybe even add a third window if it could be done proportionate to the existing windows on the lower floors, just below that floor. And finally, I think the relevant view for us is the view from 92nd Street and Fifth Avenue at the bus stop near Central Park, adjacent to Central Park. And from that vantage point, and there are no trees to interfere, you have a clear shot above the Jewish Museum to the existing penthouse, both on Fifth and facing south. And I might just add, that's the bus stop that former Secretary of State Cy Vance used to get to work, and he lived at 111 Fifth Avenue. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval, and I will bring it back to you, Vice Chair Blend.
Thank you. Alternative applicant for any further thoughts?
Appreciate all the commentary. We think this is the most unobtrusive solution. I have to say, the more divisions if we were to add more divisions to it, just the framing that would be required for contemporary structure would really actually draw more attention to itself up there. Historically, this was always differentiated from the design of the lower building. It was very sort of deco inspired from what we can tell in the photographs, and the base building obviously is neo-Renaissance. So there was always a juxtaposition of style and endeavor there. Setting back, as I mentioned, this is the apartment. It's about 2,500 square feet. It's not a huge unit. Setting back is the owner losing the existing apartment that they acquired, and similarly with the height, this is a reconstruction only because of the structural need to both address the building's needs and the window wall itself. And so I think all of those things really indicate to us that something as simple as possible that draws on the facts that we know about the existing or the historic structure is the best approach, and that's what we think we propose today.
Thank you. Let me ask a question though about the window. The window still is going to rest on the parapet as opposed to the structure. Why did you do that? Why didn't you set the window back as well?
So the window is in the plane over the parapet still, but it is not physically resting on the parapet anymore.
So all of its weight is transferred to the,
Is transferred behind, there'll be a new column system down to the original building structure, and it will have outriggers that at the top and bottom. So it'll sort of be hovering above the parapet to keep the plane the same,
Right.
but the weight will no longer be. on
and
the
that's where the plane is now. So we could argue that that's part of the
also
grant.
add that actually, the whole thing is getting slightly lower than it is now. Because when we think in the early 2000s, when they encapsulated the old roof structure, it went up barely, I think like 1.5 foot. So it is a little bit lower, the proposal. It's a little bit lower.
Questions?
The existing building, the window sizes are much smaller, aren't they? They're not 14 or 11 feet.
No, these are exactly the same size as the existing. ones.
Exactly the same size.
Exactly the same. And on the lower section, they appear a little bit taller, but they're matching the historic height. The historic windows have been partially encapsulated. So we have those historic windows there, so we were able to get exact measurements of how high they are.
So something changed. They changed the horizontal lighting or something, make it tall.
You basically took out that big fat fascia,
It's covering the original plane of the windows.
that section, that's the one.
There you go. So here, you can see right there, there are windows embedded and the fascia comes down over it here. And so the height of the window historically was from here to here, which is what we're matching. And you can see it in this.
Yep.
Right there. So the window height was at the top of this brown section of the fascia. And then this was the added area.
It's actually a couple inches lower than the fascia height of the curve.
So the fascia went up.
Went down.
Down.
It went both down and up.
It went down.
Yeah.
And,
So here you can see the windows that are on the interior. So this is the historic height, and this is what the window height is currently that is expressed on the exterior.
thank you.
Other questions, commissioners? If not, I'll ask Commissioner Goldblum to make a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Commissioner Chapin to second.
Second.
All right, we're ready for discussion. Oh, yes, we have to
And
vote.
aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing now is closed. Let's just start going around the room, I guess, with Commissioner Ginsburg.
I have no problems with this. I think it is a reasonable solution and will make the facade look better than it does now, and it isn't making it basically, to some degree, restoring what was there, but doing it in a way that will be structurally sound for the longer term by not resting on the parapet.
Mr. Chen?
I agree. This is appropriate and is a replacement what is there.
Hi.
Yes.
So there, as far back as we can see from the photographs, there was a penthouse on the roof. And so it was grandfathered in, and then over time it was changed. And I can't say that the structure preceding the new design was particularly elegant. And now there is this problem because of its load bearing on of the way it bears on the parapet, and it needs to be changed. I happen to think that this is a very elegant, streamlined solution that will disappear a little more. It'll be a little more recessive just because of we lose the fascia at the top, and the proportions of the windows are better. We did lose a little height. I think it's a very good solution.
Thanks. Yeah.
Just want to make sure at least one commissioner does also comment on the introduction of the single
the
light
new window.
windows on the lot line
Oh,
facade.
I can do that too.
It's, you can see it in this
Yeah,
rendering.
right.
Yeah,
Or it's not the new window opening itself, it's the use of single light windows in those openings, which wouldn't have been an original
Right.
configuration. And since they're visible, staff rules would allow that, or require that, but
Mm.
there are other single light windows obviously on the facade now.
Right, actually evens out the facade. I think it's fine.
Commissioner Chu.
Yeah, I think that the proposal is appropriate and simple, simplifying the existing condition with going to 2 volumes as opposed to 3. And I think that single light window is fine.
Commissioner Mann.
I agree with the other commissioners. I don't have anything to add. It's appropriate.
Mr. Jefferson.
I have nothing to add except that the bronze looks very handsome.
Okay, well, something to add.
More minimalist than lighter, I think it's fine.
Agreed.
Yeah, and for my 2 cents, I agree, even though testimony said it's more visible or more
Yeah.
calling attention. I don't agree with that. I think it's less attention because it's darker. Well, that's true too, but
I just think it,
I think darker usually is a receding color. Okay, I guess we're ready for the roll call, sir. The motion, I forget motions, motion to make, yes, you have to read it. Thank you.
With regards to LPC 24-07956-1115 Fifth Avenue, extended Carnegie Hill Historic District. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the expanded Carnegie Hill District. I further note that the penthouse curtain wall was altered without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits, including the replacement of windows sometime between 2004 and 2012 based on photographic evidence. I recommend approval, finding that the west facade of the penthouse has been highly altered and the remaining historic mullions have no distinguishing architectural features and have weathered over time, and therefore their removal and replacement will not eliminate significant architectural features, that the historic features of the penthouse, including a large area of decorative glazing, were incrementally removed, replaced, or altered over time, and that only limited photographic evidence of the penthouse exists. Therefore, recreating these details would be based on conjectural evidence and would not enhance the remaining significant architectural features of the building, that the modification of the roof line will result in conditions that more closely recall the historic roof line, that the proposed curtain wall assembly featuring a combination of fixed and casement windows and fixed and operable transoms recall the historic scale and articulation of the glazing while not calling undue attention to itself or detracting from the building below, that the proposed dark finish of the penthouse curtain wall and coping will be harmonious with the material palette of the building, and that the proposed dark finish single pane casement window at secondary facades will be located on high floors and seen in conjunction with other built and turn casement windows installed prior to designation, thereby providing a sense of continuity of fenestration.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you offer a second?
Second.
Now I think we're ready.
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 9 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, we'll now move to the next and last item of the day. Public hearing item number 8, LPC 24-03527, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, Block 8055, Lot 10, 23303 Bay Street in the Douglaston Historic District. This is a colonial revival style house built circa 1915. The application is to construct an addition and legalize the installation of a shed and fence.
So I think we have a motion to open the hearing. Yep. Okay, then never mind.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Carroll. My name is Victor Dadris. I'm partner at Dadris Architects. I'm here to present a proposal for 23303 Bay Street, Douglas Historic District. It is a quarter property on Bay Street. It's not in the Douglas Manor Association, which is the peninsula, but it's on a historic part of Douglaston, one of the oldest streets. And you'll see from the photos, it's on a corner property. It's property off Little Lake Bay. Surrounded beautifully. Our project, our site, which I'll show you in further details, the upper left-hand corner site. As was mentioned, in 1915. Structure originally with significant renovation that was approved and completed in 2004 by architect Kevin Wolf and the current owner. The current owner, this is also unique because it's a three-family residence. There don't exist any others in Douglaston. The current owner is actually looking to, I'll say, downsize and move into the second floor of this building. That's the reason for this addition. This is the side view, the west view. That was south view, the front facade. And his idea is to occupy the second floor, but he needs more space. So he asked us to please put an addition over that existing first floor extension. So that's what I'm going to show you. This is the opposite side. You will not see the addition. That's not what's happening here. But this is part of what was completed in 2004. And it's a very beautifully maintained and this is the rear southwest corner of the house. I'm sorry, northwest corner of the house. One thing that I didn't even realize when I took this job 2 years ago was that there is an existing shed that was not, they didn't get a permit for. It's not legal. So we were asked by staff to add legalization of the shed to this application. Quite honestly, you see the sort of retaining wall there. I didn't even think this was on its property. But I have added it to there. We can discuss that issue also. This is that same view, but we were asked to take it with the trees not in leaves so you can see it a little bit better. This is a photo that I actually got from LPC staff. Thank you, because I didn't have this from, I'm going to guess, 25, 30 years ago, at least, when there was no shed. Exactly when this was taken. I was given this by staff. You can see that's without the shed, and that's with the shed. Okay, so existing on the right, the yellow highlight is the existing one-story extension, which is right now an exterior patio or the second floor unit. And on the left, you can see we are going to enclose that with a one-story addition to it. Existing basement, these are drawings that don't relate. Here we go. This is the existing second floor unit with the, so right now it's first extension or patio over the first floor, and we are combining it into the apartment, basically a larger master bedroom suite and master bath. That's the roof plan. Here's sort of the front facade. Yellow is highlighted, and on the left is the proposal. This is that west facade. Yellow is the highlighted area. Obviously, on the left is the proposal. From the east side and from the south, I'm sorry, the north side. Sections. Getting the roof lines was very tricky because of the existing configuration structure. We looked at lots of different roof lines, and it's been mentioned. We met with the Douglaston Little Lake Historical Society and with the Community Board 11 Landmarks Committee. They had asked us to consider, actually they're the ones that asked us, if I back up a little bit, to consider the windows on this facade, because when we proposed it originally to them, it was a blank facade. They asked for some fenestration, some windows to be added there, and we did that. They also asked about the roof lines, and we showed them a couple of different options, and they agreed that our option was probably the best alternative. There it is, obviously on the right before and on the left, the proposal. There it is with the shed and a proposal behind over the first story extension. Here it is up closer, obviously, so you don't have the shed blocking it. We were asked to do this rendering. It's a little bit odd, but it's the front facade also. The issue is that the pine tree blocks where the extension would be. So we created this at staff's request, sort of existing on the right, and then proposed on the left. We sort of created the lower left. We sort of we pulled the tree apart to show. Nothing would actually look like, but we were asked to show that for your reference. That's the proposal. Thank you for your consideration, your comments. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So the existing addition has a hipped roof, is that correct?
The existing addition to the right, I believe it does, and we looked at a hip roof for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't get it to work. That was one of the questions that was asked by.
Yeah, because it is somewhat, fairly symmetrical house, so ideally you would.
Right. We did look at that option. I can share the options with you or with staff.
Okay.
It didn't work as well, quite honestly.
And the windows, you were saying they weren't centered, they were centered and then.
Center, you saying on the west?
How do they orient with the windows below? But if you could go back to that shot, it looked like they were sort of off to the side.
These here. Yeah, that is due to the spaces on the interior. There are two rooms on the interior. They are framed for the interior space of the room, not specifically above that first floor.
And I just wanted to, on the shed, it's a little odd because it's right up at the road.
That is true.
Normally, these sheds are at the back of residences though, and I know this is at the back. And also this street is a dead end.
It's a dead end.
Yeah, there's only like two other houses on the street. So that and once the addition is built, it would also, granted the tree weren't there, tree falls down, whatever. You could see the addition on that side. I think that it would kind of mask the shed somewhat too. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. You have a good understanding, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's go to testimony. There's nobody in the room. Greg?
Thank you, Commissioner. We have one hand raised in the attendees list, that being Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds the bulk of this proposed addition appropriate, but we feel that the details of the facade, roof, and eaves are unresolved, particularly at the southwest elevation, where the roofline meets the house. The Juliet balcony and patio doors also mar the composition. Additionally, we find the shed constructed without permits inappropriate and ask the Commission not to legalize it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised. If you would like to speak on this item, please click the raise hand button now. Okay, no hands are raised. So I will note for the record that Queens Community Board 11 recommends mixed approval, stating the shed should be moved to another part of the yard and that the existing slab should be broken up. New fencing would be required as the shed is located at the center of the existing fence. The board had no other objections to the other items in the application. And with that, I'll bring it back to Commissioner Goldblum.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to the comments from the testimony?
I think I mentioned the shed, as I said, that I was not a party to the installation of, and I told the owners that there was a good chance that we might be asked to relocate, remove the shed to another location, which is what CB 11, Committee Board 11 suggested on the site. And he said he understood that issue. Obviously, he wasn't happy about it, but he thought that could make sense. Regarding the, I guess the other comment I'm trying to remember was the Juliet
roof,
balcony,
the roof, yeah.
French doors. Yeah, the client that originally went back and forth with sketches and designs on an outdoor balcony, because they wanted some outdoor space, viewing the water. We had a roofed, covered balcony, an open balcony. We wound up compromising at our recommendation to not actually mass the balcony or outdoor space, but to try to accomplish our goals with the Juliet balcony idea.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just the last question, in regard to that, the centering of the window, you stated earlier that you were basing on the interior layout. What would happen if it's tried to be realigned, so to speak? Is that disrupt the interior?
Thank you, that's a great question. That has come up, and that's a fair question. I'm going to just show you the floor. We can adjust accordingly. There is, so the windows are actually to either side of the master bed in that room. I suppose if we had to, and I understand why, you'd say such a recommendation, locate the windows above the lower floor. The bed would somehow have to be relocated or be up against windows. That's why it is. I'm willing to work, to accommodate what you think it needs. That's sort of the history. Honestly, when I first proposed it, there were no windows. We added the windows at the request of CB 11's Landmarks Committee. They thought that wall looked blank without any fenestration on it. They thought because it has a window on the north, I'm sorry, directions, on the south facing facade, that they didn't need a window. Also, there'd be a lot of windows for that small alcove. Sorry, I'm trying to get to that facade to show you. There is a window here on the alcove. And so the window would be, absolutely, we could consider that, because honestly, the clients didn't ask for these windows. So I would entertain, I would be happy to work with you on, that. Our original proposal was no windows there. So we're adding the windows at the request that could use it on this facade, so it wouldn't be a blank facade. We could add it to the alcove, we could make them larger. It's an attempt to answer that question.
Okay, any questions, additionals? Let's close the hearing. Commissioner Jefferson, give me a motion, thank you. And great. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the hearing is closed. Comments. Let's start with Commissioner Chu.
So I do think that the roof is awkward on the addition on the second floor. It seems really at odds with the other side of the house. I think that in general, the mass is okay, but I don't think that it's really played out to its point that I can approve it yet. And I think there's oddity with the roof, and I do think that there could be a little bit more work on the windows to help balance. Right now, it feels so odd that they're thrown over to the side of the mass. I think there could be something a little that works a little bit better with the rest of the punched openings. In terms of the shed, it does not meet their requirements, and I know you said that the owner is aware that they may have to move it. I think, in my opinion, I do see that it's not that visible because it is at the end of the street, but I fear allowing these situations, because if it's a rule, then we want to respect them, because then there may be other people that they want to break the rules because it's not that visible. And there's plenty of space back on this lot that I think it could move to. I think just having that fence in terms of the front of the property, it's nicer to not have the shed right up to the street like that. Those are my thoughts.
Commissioner Master?
So I agree with the comment on the roof. However, I believe that the architect said that they had explored several variations of the roof, and for whatever reason, that they weren't able to go with a roof that was similar to what we had. So I'm actually okay with the roof, given that they've thought about it and considered different alternatives. The windows, the fenestration, yes, it would be nice if they did something other than what is now, because it looks awkward. And so I think that they can work on a different proposal. And then the shed definitely has to be pushed back.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
The L-shaped addition doesn't work, and I don't know how they could make it work. And the L-shapes are very hard. But anyway, and the shed should be where it is.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Well, I would like to see colleagues to our architects as to, whether it's, that is possible. If it's not, very feasible within the design, I certainly could go along with what's presented. I think they should do something to adjust the windows for balance. I normally would be very much in favor of moving the shed, knowing the circumstances here where it's on a dead end street where there are only two other residences, beyond that would possibly see this shed. And it is we say, well, they should be at the back. Well, it is at the back. It just happens that there's a street on that side, which is a short street, a dead end street. So, if they can readily move it, then it would be better not to have it at the street. But I could put up with it if other people were okay with it.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree with Commissioner Chu. I think on the windows, if you just had the single window,
that's what I'm
it
thinking.
would probably solve the window issue. And I think the shed should be moved if at all possible.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Chen?
I agree with most of the comments, and I think that to the extent possible, it would be great if the roof be studied. But and then I'm less strict on the shed than not. But I defer to the majority. But obviously the window being a blank, now that you have one window, I think it should be studied with the see what can be done.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Lutfi?
I guess I'll start with the shed. So I think that the shed should definitely be moved. This is a lovely house. Really shouldn't be in the front of the house, and wasn't supposed to be there to begin with. So I recommend that. I think the idea of the single window for the second floor or something else, you can work with staff on it and explore the options. Makes sense. And I do think it makes sense to do a little more exploration on the roof. This is a very, symmetrically designed and built property, and to add something in a way that helps it fit, together better would be great in terms of roof.
I mean, I just want to make one
Yeah.
comment because we talked a lot about the roof I'm wondering if it is appropriate to try to do that because it's not working. Maybe one should try a flat roof as an addition, different.
I was actually going to make the exact same recommendation. My thought was to just jack the whole thing up by a story, keep the decorative railing.
Yeah.
You know, the issue might be where it wraps around to the back.
That's right.
So maybe you do like a combination of the flat roof and the shed kind of flap. But I think that the applicant should, I think we should take no action because it sounds like we have some issues to hash out related to the roof line. I think that the applicant should share with the staff the studies that they've come up with to date and consider they want to add to that array with another one or two based on the comments that we heard today. I think that there's a consensus about the relocation of the shed that would conform with the rules and that would be less visible and less intrusive on one's experiencing of the main house. So why don't we leave it at that and we'll have you back as soon as you're ready. And I think that wraps up our day.
All right.
Thank you all very much.